Thank you for your testimony. Before we start the questions, would you introduce your leadership team at the dais?
Certainly. To my far left is our Director of National Veterans Service, Mr. Bill Bradshaw. The Executive Director of our Washington office, Bob Wallace. Our Director of National Legislative Service, Mr. Ray Kelly. And my appointee this year's National Legislative Committee Chairman, Gil Hernandez.
Well, thank you for your compelling testimony, and thanks to all of you for your support of the VFW. I want to you said made so many great topics that if I started trying to do all of them, I wouldn't do any of them justice. So I want to focus on two if I can.
Yes, sir.
Holding the VA accountable was the key statement in your entire statement. We have had a situation, I have felt like for some time, where the Veterans Administration Health Services were waiting for the next chairman of the committee to come in or waiting for the next election, so some of us were gone. So there was never a real connect between the Congress and the VA. Chairman Miller and I have made an effort to go to the VA. We've already done a town hall meeting at the VA in Washington, and we're going to be traveling to VA sites around the country as the year develops so that we get out of this mold of you come and testify for 5 minutes and then we're out of your hair and you're out of ours. We want to be in your hair. We want you to be in our hair. The VFW, I hope all members will read their report on Veterans Choice because it was a great, detailed report. One of the things you focused on is y'all can be the eyes and ears that we need to tell us what's going wrong in the VA and what's going right in the VA. Secretary McDonald needs the authority to hold VA employees accountable, and that means the power to dismiss and the support from us to back those dismissals up so they take place. We don't want to just rank and run around and nilly-dilly and fire people, but we do want accountability. You have accountability in the military, you have accountability in the Congress. By golly, there ought to be accountability in the VA health systems, and we're going to see to it that that takes place. And we're going to ask you to be our eyes and ears through the VFW, letting us know where you see problems, as you have done in the past. Let us know where you see good things. Lamar Alexander is often commented by quoting Alex Haley, who said to always look for the good in people and praise it. We always want to look for the good in the VA and praise it, but we also want to find those areas where we need improvement. We know there are a lot of areas on that. The second thing I want to focus on is to let you know we're going to focus on the 40-mile rule. When Congress passed Veterans Choice and we wrote the language the way we wrote it, the unintended consequence of writing it as by using the word facility was facility meant anything the VA had as a facility, whether or not they offered the type of health care a veteran needed. We need to make sure that if the health care that's within 40 miles of the veteran doesn't provide chemotherapy or doesn't provide a heart transplant or doesn't provide the specialty the veteran needs, that they get to exercise the 40-mile rule because the health care they need is not available. We also need to be certain that we do how long it takes to get to the drive there, not how long it takes on a straight line. This straight line application is just crazy. It needs to be the time from leaving the garage of the veteran to pulling in the parking lot of the Veterans Administration. Senator Blumenthal and I have committed in our next hearing in the Senate will be on the 40-mile rule. Dean Heller has done a lot of work. John Bozeman has done a lot of work on that. Jerry Moran has done a lot of work on that. We want to perfect the language to deliver for you what you've asked for, and that's a 40-mile rule that works for veterans. I'd like any comments you have on the 40-mile rule.
Well, sir, the best way to describe it would be the rim of the north rim of the Grand Canyon to the south rim of the Grand Canyon is about 1 mile. But if you try to drive it, it's 100 miles down one way and 100 miles up the other. It can't be as the crow flies. It's got to be as the crow drives.
You and I didn't practice before this hearing, but after listening to your testimony and reading the report, I figured you'd have a great analogy for us, and that is a terrific analogy. I want to commend you on focusing on women's issues. We have a lot of work to do in the Veterans Administration Health Services to deliver the type of health care that women should have. They have unique problems and unique opportunities that we need to make sure are met. And we can't forget about sexual trauma. There are a lot of post-service problems that are soft tissue TBI and PTSD problems that are embedded in a sexual trauma incident that took place in the military. We need to make sure our mental health services are available to those people and they get the services they need to prevent the type of trauma that we've seen in the VA. And lastly, I want to commend Richard Blumenthal. Richard was the right arm that I had in the committee so that the first full meeting we had, we passed the SAVE Act. He's been a driving force behind it. I want to thank Chairman Miller, remind Chairman Miller, we took up the House bill and passed the House bill out of the Senate to show our commitment to bipartisan and bicameral work to see to it our veterans get the health care services they need and the health care services they deserve. Chairman Miller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. It concerns me when we are 90 to 120 days in a rollout of the choice program that people in the central office and around the country are already waving a white flag saying the choice program's not going to work, not giving it the opportunity to work. As the chairman has eloquently stated, this is supposed to be a supplement to the good work that VA is capable of doing as long as people are held accountable and know that there are consequences for their actions. It is egregious to me that VA would still force any veteran to drive 4 hours daily to get their chemotherapy treatment just because they did not meet the letter of the law as it relates to the Choice Act. And I say that because VA has the ability and had the ability prior to the Choice Act to fee that type of service out. VA has got to understand that they are there to serve the veterans of this country and not serve the bureaucracy. They are not a sacred cow. We have got to change the way that they do business. Now, that being said, I believe the Secretary wants to do that. We want to work with him. We want to work with organizations such as yours to better serve those that you represent and some that you don't represent, because not everybody is a member of your organization. But accountability, again, is the thing that I think all of us up here on this dais want to see from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And, you know, part of the problem is it's very difficult to remove anybody from federal civil service. The Secretary, like I said, is trying, but not with the speed with which I think any of us would expect. They want to make sure the decisions are upheld because they have the ability to appeal. One of the things in the Choice Act that I'm interested in hearing from you is the statement that many veterans still don't know what that program is. They don't know what they're eligible for, and more outreach needs to be done from the VA. Outreach more than just sending a card to a veteran with a letter that says, oh, by the way, this is a temporary program. That doesn't give anybody comfort that it's going to be around for a while. Well, I think our intention is that it will be. But how can the VA better reach out to the veteran community and let them know that this new innovative card is available for them and what that card will actually provide them?
Well, in addition to mailing the card and the letter, that's where VSOs come into a key play here. And I do know that we have regular contact with the VA, and we convey that message to our members. And we reach out to all veterans, not just members of our organization. Our service officers will file claims for VA benefits for any veteran. We don't require VFW membership to reach out and service all the veterans of our great nation. I think communicating through the VSOs is key to getting that information out and clarifying some of the information.
Have they reached out to you in a way that allows you to provide the most recent information, and if so, how?
I'm going to defer that to my Washington office that communicates with them on an almost daily basis.
We meet, staff meets with the VA regularly on issues with the programs, and we also meet with the contractors, TriWest and HealthNet, on a periodic basis to find out what's going on. I had a conference call last week for an hour and a half with TriWest on what the issues that they were faced with. They've reached out to us, but the problem is the issue you talk about 4 hours to drive. They have the right to just contract that out in a local community. Apparently, the contract that they had was too expensive, they said. Well, there's got to be a way to get around that. I mean, you can't expect somebody who's going through oncology treatment to go 4 hours each way to get to treatment every day. I mean, that's unconscionable and unacceptable. I think the education of the VA staff on what they should have been doing all along and what they can do and should do has to continue to go through, and the VA has to continue to do that.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Ranking Member Blumenthal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your very generous words. I want to focus on a number of your findings in the report, which I think are very telling and compelling, and I want to thank you for the report. And also focusing on some of the good news. The report says that 82% of veterans are satisfied with VA care that they receive. The docs, the nurses, the staff at our VA facilities are doing a good job. They're plainly overburdened and overworked, and that's one of the reasons for the delays and, unforgivably, one of the causes for the cooking of books and manipulation of records to, in effect, disguise the delay times and the inadequacy of the timeliness of care. The quality of care on the part of those docs evidently was good and satisfying many of the veterans, but the wait times were intolerable. And so I want to focus on the very important findings of this report that indicate at the local level that VA facilities are continuing to be less than adequate in their consistent performance, that is, their inconsistencies in referring for non-VA care. There are delays in transfers of records to non-VA facilities, and wonder if you could comment on the recommendation that you make, in fact, that the VA must ensure non-VA care coordination teams at those local VA facilities are adequately staffed. I gather that still has not been done. There are still deficiencies in the operation of those local VA facilities, and perhaps you could comment on it.
Well, Senator, as with any new program rollout, there's going to be unforeseen circumstances, and they've got to have the flexibility to adapt when an issue arises and take care of these kind of matters. And there's going to be more things are going to come up. This is
there has to be better staffing at that
Yes, sir.
level and better training.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, has the VA reached out to you after this report to, in effect, debrief you?
Yes, they have.
And how completely or thoroughly have they reached out?
I would say they're more honest today than they have ever been in the past on what their challenges are and where their issues are. The reason we need to have the records sent back is, it's not only quality health care, but this could affect the veterans' compensation and disability. And if you don't have those records, you can't justify putting that claim forward. So there's more to the puzzle than just passing records. It's the veteran. It's the individual that we have to coordinate with properly. They have to coordinate.
And in your experience, yesterday in this very room, I believe, I questioned the Secretary of Defense about the connectivity between the Department of Defense and the VA on exactly that issue, on medical records, on disability claims, so that there is a more seamless transfer of information. I think that is still lacking. Is that your experience as well?
Yes. In fact, there's people in this room that are younger than how many years the Congress has been passing laws to get seamless transition going, and we've been talking about it. It's not there. DOD is still moving in one direction, VA in the other. They say the two shall meet, but they're not there. And a lot of money's been spent.
Let me just conclude, and I have many more questions. Unfortunately, my time is about to expire, but the Inspector General, underfunded, a critical source of accountability. A number of us have questioned the Secretary of the VA very closely on the lamentably low increase in that budget, less than a percentage increase. And still, by the way, as you well know, the Inspector General has not submitted a report on that debacle that led to the choice program, which I think is very, very unfortunate. In fact, unacceptable, because we need to know who was responsible, who should be held accountable for those cooking of books and manipulation of records that I referred to earlier. Has the Inspector General ever contacted the VFW?
Periodically, we get contacted by the Inspector General on ideas and so forth. And if we have an incident that affects one of our people out in the field, we obviously get called and contacted. But it's not an ongoing process.
Maybe it should be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ranking Member Corinne Brown.
Thank you. I understand Commander Marcan is here from Florida. Would you please wave your hand? And also the student coordinator of the Veteran Student Union at FSU, Mr. Pierce, would you stand? I want you all to know the reason why I'm shouting out to him is they have the #1 program for military in the country. Thank you. Now, my question goes to construction. I noticed that you would recommend an additional $1 billion for the VA for construction of VA facilities. Now, I know a little bit about construction of VA facilities because I've been trying to get mines done in Florida, in Orlando, for over 25 years. Do you think, and I understand it's at the end now, and that we're going to soon open this hospital, and I'm going to invite everybody to come to the opening. But my question is, can they handle this additional workload?
Well, it's obviously going to take budget. With budget and appropriations, excuse me, you have personnel, you can have oversight, but I'll be honest with you, ma'am, I have never seen a VA construction project come in on time and on budget. Never.
So what is your recommendation? I agree with you. And in fact, though, part of the problem was with the Congress because we had not built any hospitals in over 15 years. So a lot of the expertise was gone. And so that was one of the problems. And so we brought in these new, 5 or 6 additional hospitals, and, it hasn't gone to plan because the planning was not there before.
One of my favorite words, accountability. Hold those responsible for these projects accountable, and also have them hold these contractors accountable.
Yes. I am not disagreeing with you at all because a lot of people just want to hold the VA accountable, but when you talk to some of the stakeholders, it's a team effort, and everybody needs to be on the same page.
We totally agree with you, Congresswoman.
In the recommendation about the choice card, a lot of my veterans have received the card, but they choose not to use it. They want their service at the VA, even if they're on the waiting list. What do you recommend that the VA, or what can we do, because we got to work with you as a stakeholder, to encourage them to use the choice card?
Those folks that choose not to use the choice card,
That's right,
choose to stay with the VA for their medical care because they're getting good medical care and they trust the VA. And they should have that option. If they want to drive more than 40 miles to get to the VA, if that's their choice, it should be their choice.
Well, I'm not even talking about the drive. For example, I'm talking about people that's have to wait over 30 days, they can they can use a choice card. But they choose to wait until the VA can see them.
Again, it's probably because they trust the medical care at VA. VA is great medical care.
Really? Everybody tells me that they want their service at the VA, period. And once they get in, they are very satisfied. And I understand that the satisfaction rate is what? Is higher than the general population using the other physicians.
Yes, ma'am. I personally am very satisfied with the care that I receive when I do have at the VA in Reno.
Yeah.
So, and I live 140 miles from there.
But you're satisfied with the service you get once you get there?
Yes, I am.
Good, good, good. The last thing is, I guess I'm very concerned about the wait times also. And we're trying to do what we can to make sure that anyone have an emergency that they can see outside physicians. And the VA has always had the authority to do that. Not with the choice card, they had it before. So what's the disconnect?
Well, I'm not sure. I would say that if some of the people are going to utilize their choice card and seek non-VA care, that in itself will reduce some of the workload at the VA clinics and the regional medical centers, which should reduce some of the other wait times.
Well, we gave them, I want to say $5 billion so they could hire additional doctors, nurses, support services. So I would like to see them utilize that $5 billion to do what they need to do to make sure the veterans get the care that they deserve. Thank you again, all of you, for your service, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you.
For the benefit of the members, we operate under the early bird rules, so we're going to introduce congressmen and senators in order of their appearance. And the next four will be Senator Heller, Representative Titus, Representative Kaufman, and Senator Manchin. Senator Heller.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. And again, Commander, welcome. I also want to acknowledge Gil Hernandez. It's great to have two on the witness table from my home state. Commanders, you know my father's a Korean War veteran, disabled veteran, and receives same care that you do from the Reno VA hospital. And he is a satisfied customer also. Secretary McDonald's had a couple of bumps in the road in his first 6 months. Can you give me the assessment of yourself and your organization of how the Secretary is doing?
Senator, thank you for that question. I personally believe that Bob McDonald is the right man for this job. He accepted what at the time was the worst job in America. And he has already made significant improvements and changes. It's like eating an elephant, sir, one bite at a time. It's not going to happen overnight, but he has got the VA going in the right direction.
Commander, thank you. I've got a local question in the state of Nevada dealing with the regional office in Reno. There's some movement. I think the speaker after me will have more to say about it than myself. But do you have an opinion about moving that Reno Varo from northern Nevada down to southern Nevada?
Well, sir, that it's where the bulk of the population is, and you do have that big new facility down there that was just opened up a couple years ago. I really don't have an opinion on it. It makes sense to go where the population is.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't really have an opinion either. All I want is a regional office that works.
Yes, sir.
For the veterans in the state of Nevada. Another question, you being from Hawthorne, Nevada, Gil, you're from Elko, two rural areas within the state of Nevada, and this obviously affects all veterans living in rural parts of America. Can you tell me if there's anything missing now from the VA's delivery service in rural portions of America?
It's really hard to justify the expense of even, in some communities, even a CBOC. Now, there is a CBOC there in Fallon, which is 70 miles away, and I think we've expanded the CBOCs around the nation to service rural areas, and that's a step in the right direction. We've certainly requested in our independent budget, we requested more for construction of facilities, and some of that being CBOCs for the rural areas.
Let me change directions here for a minute. Do you hear any complaints about prosthetic services for veterans?
I have
Timing, quality of service. The reason I'm asking this is I'm getting phone calls, or have received phone calls in the past from vendors that would like to participate in these programs, and yet it's very narrowly contracted to very large delivery services. Have you had any notions, any comments or questions raised?
I've not had any experiences with any of that coming to my attention. On contrary to that, I have heard of one instance where someone was lived in Pennsylvania, was visiting in California, had a problem, an infection with their stump, and went to the local VA, and the physician examined and said, well, the problem is you got an infection here. Let me give you some antibiotics and come back in a week or so, and we'll take a look at you. He said, well, no, I'm here on vacation. I'm not going to be here 2 weeks from now. And then the doc said, well, you know what? One of the problems causing that is your prosthetic isn't right. He said, so you're leaving in 2 weeks? And the guy said, yeah. He said, well, come back next week and we'll have a new prosthetic for you. And he got a new prosthetic while he was there. And that's a story that VFW was happy to share with Secretary McDonald, because he needs to hear the good stories too, not just the horror stories.
No, that's a great story. Mr. Chairman, my time's run out, but I again want to thank the commander. I do have to leave for other meetings. I just want you to know that I'm very, very grateful for you and everybody that's here in this audience for what you do for veterans across this country, and especially what you do here in the state of Nevada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator, for all you do for veterans.
Congressman Titus.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I, too, would like to join my fellow Nevadan in thanking you, Commander Stroud, for all you do for veterans, and tell you how proud you make us in Nevada with your leadership. And it was a pleasure yesterday to meet with Gil in my office and his team and talk about issues affecting veterans from the Vietnam era all the way up to today. We've worked together for a long time, and I always welcome you to come and educate me on the topic. I also appreciate the fact that you don't have an opinion where the facility should go in Nevada. I do have a very strong opinion about that. I think it should go in Las Vegas. That's not only my district, but that's where 150,000 of the slightly over 200,000 veterans in Nevada live. We do have that new hospital, and the facility in Reno was the fifth worst in the country for the backlog, and it has been without a director for over a year. And they can't seem to recruit anybody who wants to go there. When they hired 15 new officers for the Las Vegas facility, they were filled just like that. I'm not suggesting that people would rather live in Las Vegas than in Reno, but there is something to those figures. So I hope to see it relocate there if that's possible. I just wanted to thank you, too, for highlighting the issue of women veterans. That is just so important. And the number of women veterans is growing, as you pointed out. As I hear from women veterans, there seems to be that there are several things they need specifically, and I would ask your advice on this. First, they need gender-specific care. Many of the old VA facilities don't even provide any privacy for women veterans coming in, so I think we need to look at that from the health care standpoint. And the second thing is they aren't able to take advantage of some of the benefits that are there because of the child care issue, that like going to job training and going back to work or going back to school because they can't get the child care that they need. I think we need to look at those issues for women, and I would ask the VFW's advice, your personal advice, what are some of the things we can do to move that agenda forward?
Well, we've got to share this concern with the VA. Get these facilities established. I was traveling. I travel all the time, and I'll be honest with you, I don't remember where I was, but I visited a VA center, and they had a separate building that was the women's clinic. And I was given a tour of that and briefing by the director that their women veterans, their patients, had everything that they needed. And so my advice would be have a separate women's facility at every VA regional medical center, with the exception, obviously, of, some things can be jointly used, the X-ray and those kinds of things. But as far as the gender specific, I believe the women veterans should have a separate clinic where number one, their privacy is the integrity of their privacy is protected, and they get the proper gender specific care that they need and deserve.
Mm-hmm. I know we found out that yes, I agree with that. We discovered that about a fourth of the facilities don't even have a gynecologist on staff. So if you'll help me work with the VA, I've pointed this out to them too. I would certainly appreciate it. And let's look at some of the child care issues as well moving forward. And so I look forward to working with y'all.
Absolutely. We agree with you 100%.
All right. Thank you, sir. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congressman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to recognize my fellow VFW members from the state of Colorado. If you could please stand up, those from the state of Colorado, great. Thank you all. Thanks for being here. Well, I'm proud to be a life member of your organization as an Army Marine Corps veteran, and thank you. And I'm concerned about the transition of our veterans leaving active duty right now, and I want to ask you a question about that. I first transitioned out as a young enlisted soldier, and I was single, went to University of Colorado under the GI Bill. I mean, that was all pretty easy. But then I came back after being a Marine Corps officer, being older, came back for the transition. My resume was Army Infantry, Marine Corps Infantry, and didn't have a business degree, and I wanted to be in business, and everybody would tell me, thanks for your service, but we don't have a place for you in our organization. And I got so frustrating, one day I joked that I put down on my resume, instead of being an infantry officer specializing in amphibious warfare, I put down that I was involved in international real estate specializing in the acquisition of beachfront property. And that didn't work. And so, but I took my savings and was able to start a small business. But most people would come out as a junior officer of my age. Then, chances are I'd be married, maybe have a family, wouldn't have this, or be an enlisted soldier or Marine, airman, sailor without the savings maybe that I had accrued as a junior officer, where I had that option. And so I'm concerned about the young men and women who don't want to go to college, who don't want to go to school at all, about the availability of apprenticeship programs, of on-the-job training, where instead of utilizing the GI Bill, that their salaries are paid for. There's a little-used program right now that does that. I think we need to beef it up. I just want to get your idea on how we can better transition the young men and women coming out of the military into the workforce.
Well, first of all, we need to get every state on board with professional accreditation in their licensing process. For example, a troop that spent 4 years in the motor pool running heavy equipment shouldn't have to take a 6-month course to get a CDL in his state. And some states are accepting military certification training for licensing. Some states are not. And we need to get this blanket across the board. Secondly, the training that the military provides in most cases far exceeds that in private licensing. I'll tell you what, a battlefield medic can work circles around a doctor, and I would put my life in their hands every day of the week, and they shouldn't have to take a long lengthy course to get their nursing license. We also need, you mentioned the transition. There's going to be an increase as the wars draw down. And there's going to be an increase of folks leaving the military. And the VFW has a presence at some of the TAP programs, which is mandatory upon separating from the service. And some of them we're not. We don't have a presence. And on some of them where we do have a presence, the VFW service officer is only given 5 minutes to say what they can do for them, how they can help them, how they can assist them with their claims, how they can assist them with filing for the GI Bill benefit. So we need to get a more significant presence in these TAP programs at these military bases where the folks are being processed out of the service.
And I want to thank you. Thank you. I want to thank the VFW in closing for your work on some of these less than honorable discharges. I've been in the military during 2 RIFs, reduction in force, where the criteria was pretty solid to thin the ranks. It was, you're not going to be able to re-enlist, or if you're passed over twice for promotion as an officer, you're going to have to leave. But there was solid criteria, and what we found in Fort Carson, Colorado, with the United States Army was that they were dismissing soldiers coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan with minor infractions that during my time on active duty it never would have occurred, that somebody would have been dismissed with a less than honorable discharge with no access to services as a veteran. I mean, I just think that's appalling, and I just want to thank you for your focus on that issue. God bless you for all you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next 4 to be recognized in order of appearance are Senator Manchin, Congressman Abraham, Rice, and Bost. Senator Manchin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank all of you for your attendance here and for the service you've given our great country. I'd like to have a shout out to my West Virginia Almost Heaven veterans, if they're here. They were here yesterday. They had to get back to Almost Heaven, didn't they? Anyway, let me just say this. There's a couple of things that I want to talk about, and I think it's very important, Commander, that we do. And first is the unemployment of our veterans. To me, it was just astounding when I came to the U.S. Senate to find that some of the highest percentage of unemployment in any ranks are veterans returning. The younger veterans, especially our older veterans, all having problems with this. We're having a hard time. We've started a Veterans Jobs Council, caucus, and then we have a campaign called I Hire a Vet. I don't know how many of you are aware of that and how many of you have been involved, but I think it's imperative that every one of you go back to your home and make sure that businesses understand how important it is to give a veteran an opportunity. First of all, it starts here. If we in Congress can't hire vets in our office, we can't lead by example. And I encourage every office here, 535 offices of Congress, to make sure they have veterans working in their office. Next of all, we'll help you with that I Hire a Vet campaign. Also, we have worked on a single portal that anyone mustering out or anyone is looking for type of employment, whatever part of the country they live in, they can go to this portal and basically give their skill sets where they want to be in the country, and we have businesses committed towards that. We have a lot of the big box stores now. We have manufacturing, DuPont, all of them committing to hire a certain percentage of veterans. So we need to keep that on for all of us. Next of all, something we have to wipe out, and I heard Bob McDonald went and spoke with him, is homelessness. There is no way on earth that a veteran should be homeless. No way. Let me just give you all something to think about, and you know it better than anybody else. Tonight, when you go to bed, when you have a bed to sleep in, there'll be 50,000 homeless veterans sleeping somewhere, not a bed, I assure you. That's got to change, and we've got to make sure that we wipe that. So I hope it's a campaign that you keep on the front burner for all of us. And finally, on the Clay Hunt, the veteran suicide, we have 22 veterans every day committing suicide. This is something where the VA clinics were putting more the Clay Hunt bill. I think you all are aware of that. It was to address the suicide, making sure we had more people that could help identify. And I think a lot of you in your post know those who need help. You've got to make sure that we can assist them. So if you want to speak on any of the joblessness, homelessness, suicide rates, what you think that we can do more of, or are we moving in the right direction?
Well, we've got to go, we've got to do more on the veteran suicide issue, because this rate of 22 suicides a day isn't new. That rate was 3 years ago, and it hasn't gone down. So that's critical. That tells me that we're not making any progress. So we've got to give it more attention. We've got to reach out and have more awareness.
Do you think they're aware of the Clay Hunt? Do we need to do more from our end, making sure that our veterans all over this country understand there is help, and help is on the way, and it's coming in the form of more resources towards PTSD and all the other problems they may have. Whether we're having a lot of them coming out from our era, the Vietnam era, or just finally coming out and looking for this help, and basically have held all this in, and we just need to be able to contact them. We think that you are the best facilitators that we have.
We reach out to our folks at every opportunity, and even in my state, my state commander's got a personal project is suicide prevention. And we're spreading the word to look out for each other, be the battle buddy, because a lot of times they won't want to go to anybody and seek help, but someone that they're close to, someone they trust, if they reach out to them, Jim, what's the matter?
Yeah.
You okay? And with that, if you save one life, then it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Let me just say that my time is expiring, and I want to thank all of you again for your service to our country and continued service for the veterans who need all the assistance and help that they deserve, and God bless each and every one of you. Thank you for being here.
Senator, thank you. And thank you for reaching out to me with a personal phone call when I was in your state.
Congressman Abraham.
Good morning. Commander Stroud, I read all your report last night. It was concise, informative, and on topic. We had a meeting with our Louisiana delegation from the VFW last night, and they espoused, and we definitely talked about exactly the issues we're talking today. So Louisiana was represented very well, and we're proud to be a part of that small community, and we appreciate everybody here for your service. I want to ask, I guess, a question on Operation Ranch Hand. That's certainly what you know, is where they did spray the 2,4-D and 2,4-T and Agent Orange. Not only once, but several times, because they couldn't seem quite to get the concentration right, so they kept spraying you guys over there over and over. And being a physician, I have read the medical reports on dioxin toxicity. My question is, what area do we need to focus on first, or prioritize, as to finding out more of our veterans that have been exposed? I understand we're working on the brown water issue, but where do we need to look to help these men and women, certainly our soldiers that were in the jungles, get treatment?
Well, not being a medical professional and not really being medically smart, I know how to put a Band-Aid on.
We're not that smart.
But I would say research. We need more research and science to identify just how many and more specific ailments that these toxins are associated with causing and being associated with. I know there's more out there because a couple times a year it's announced that a new ailment that's Agent Orange related. So there's more. And what about other toxins, not just Agent Orange? I mean, we've got specific Gulf War illnesses that folks were exposed to burn pits and things like that. So, yeah, it's the research, the science of it needs to identify what the issues are, and then we can apply resources and treatments for these conditions.
Okay, thank you. And another question, we'll switch gears a little bit. Pawnee and Senator Manchin's in your previous discussion on our suicides, in your report here, you said that only 13% of non-VA facilities are actually good enough or competent to provide the services that we need for our veterans as far as mental health issues. The question is, would your organization rather see more resource as far as personnel and money go to the VA for training or to non-VA, or would you so-called split the sheets a little bit? Where would you prefer, or where would your organization think that the resources could be best used?
Well, we need the resources in both DOD and VA because we do have a military suicide rate that is much too high as well.
And that's what I'm referring to, just the veterans rate. But in your report, you said only non-VA facilities, only 13% actually were up to speed, so to speak, as compared to be able to afford good mental health care. And my question is, if we are able to supply more resource on the mental health issue, would you prefer in the VA system more resources spent outside the VA system for mental health services for our veterans, or a little bit of both?
Well, I would say both, because we're going to have those veterans that are not being treated, don't get treatment at VA facilities.
Okay, and I guess that leads to my next question. I'm getting out of time on the choice option. As a physician, what I see, certainly the VA being centers of excellence in a lot of issues, a lot of areas. But if a veteran needs treatment for something more minor, a bronchitis, a pneumonia, a infection on his or her toe, we certainly want that veteran to be able to go locally, quickly, efficiently, and free up that appointment time for a veteran that actually needs to be in the VA system for that center of excellent help. So as a physician, I see that part of choice hopefully working well for you guys and girls. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to welcome all of you. Thank you so much. I'm a brand new congressperson, and it is my great honor to be able to serve on this committee. Is Joe Cognatori here? Joe, I was lucky enough to see Joe and Jean Ritigliano and Dave Sarnecki, who are all local New York VFW leaders. I was fortunate enough to see them yesterday. But, Commander, I'd like to just follow up on a question that Representative Titus asked about treatment for women veterans. I was fortunate enough to meet with Bill Santini, who's the commander of the Nassau County, where I come from, Nassau County VFW, and he was expressing to me the difficulty. Obviously, we know the difficulty in ensuring that women get the proper health care that they need, but he expressed a difficulty in being able to recruit women counselors so that when women do present for health care needs at a VA facility, they can speak to another woman. So can you tell me what steps, if any, you have taken or you think that VFWs can help with recruiting more women to serve as counselors?
Well, when we reach out to VA, we present them with the same issues that we testified here today with, and we totally agree with you. Women are more comfortable seeing women, and that needs to be done. The VA needs to get their resources out there to attract these employees.
How do you think they can do that? What's the best way to recruit women?
Well, yeah, they've got to be careful because the HR laws, you can't be sexist. And
I guess I'm asking you to, I don't mean to put you on the spot there,
but they can.
It's just raising awareness, I guess, for women to be in those positions.
Because they need to advertise for the positions better, I would say.
Yes. Now, one other thing that I want to go on what Senator Manchin talked about. Recently, Secretary McDonald was talking about, obviously, that very disturbing statistic of 22 veteran suicides a day. And I asked him, out of those 22 people, how many of them were connected to a VA service? And he said, out of the 22, they didn't know about 17 of them. That, to me, is the second most disturbing statistic. 22 is too high, but the fact that 17 of those veterans were not connected to a VA service for whatever reason, how do we address that issue?
We have to address, and this starts while they're serving in the military, make it clear that every troop understands that it's okay to say, I need help.
Yes.
It's the brute macho thing. I can do this. And there's it keeps people from stepping forward. Yeah. And we've got to reintegrate, reemphasize that it's okay. And I think DOD needs to rethink one of its policies of, if you walk into a mental health clinic, you lose your security clearance. A lot of people aren't getting help because they don't want to lose their security clearance, lose their job.
Yes.
We need to look at that.
Well, I couldn't agree with you more. And Secretary McDonald addressed this issue by saying that they were going to take off, mental health section, so that, because it is very much that kind of stigma that prevents people from getting that help. I want to thank you, Commander, and everyone in this room for all of the work that you do through the VFWs all across this country, for the incredibly brave men and women who all of you in this room, who have put your lives on the line for all of us. Thank you so very much for your service, and I yield back my time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Zellman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I also want to echo the thoughts of my colleague, Congressperson Rice, who is thanking you all for your service. We are both from Long Island, both freshman members, and both honored to serve here on this committee. We live in a great, free, exceptional nation thanks to your service and sacrifice. If you weren't willing to risk life and limb to protect our flag and our Constitution and freedoms and liberties, my family wouldn't be safe. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you all for your service. I'm also a proud VFW member myself. I really do appreciate all of your service and your family's service. I wanted to spend my time today, we have just a few minutes to have a little bit of a dialogue about PTSD. Our service members coming back looking like they're in one piece, but they're coming home with the mental wounds of war. So I wanted to share some ideas. I have some ideas with regards to peer support. I want to hear what your thoughts are with regards to peer support. For way of background, in New York State, we started a program called the PFC Joseph Dwyer Peer Support Program, which is active in my home county of Suffolk, as well as Nassau County and 10 other states in New York. Do you have any thoughts, observations of what you're seeing, of what's working and not working as far as the peer support model in other states in the country? And I'd also like to share some of my personal experiences with you.
Well, Battle Buddy program, looking out for each other, knowing someone has your back, and not being afraid, like we spoke about a little bit ago, to reach out and say, I need some help. Not being offended when someone comes to you when they recognize, wow, you're acting different. What's going on? Can you get some help? That's your peer support that you're talking about, and in my mind, and it's critical. It's critical because years ago it was it's shell shock. You'll get over it. No, it's serious. PTSD is serious. I mean, people having nightmares, not sleeping, sleepwalking, losing their temper, committing crime. And until you get all the answers, we need to keep giving it attention.
So one word that's used a lot with the veterans we lose for PTSD is suicide. Many of those veterans are committing suicide. I think it's also important to note, and I know this is a very sensitive topic for many of the families, is that some of our veterans who are losing to PTSD are literally, their last words are they're saying, I don't want to die. In some cases, a veteran isn't committing suicide. In the case of PFC Joseph Dwyer, who inspired us to create our program in New York, he was huffing to get temporary relief. We use a model where we have 8 to 10 veterans in a room. We have someone in charge, kind of as a mentor who receives training and advice. There's a debate whether or not that mentor should be a veteran or not, whether or not the 8 to 10 people who are sitting at that table should all be from the same conflict or can be from multiple generations. Location. Sometimes you can meet inside of a VFW. There's a debate as to whether it should be a VFW, should it be inside of a school or a church, should it be at the VA. And I also think it's important to do an important job bringing everyone together between the VA, but also connecting with an organization such as the VFW, to a local county veteran service officer, to local experts who are able to, they're willing to offer up their expertise, volunteer their time to assist, to build, to train that mentor. These are a few things. I want to know if you have any thoughts on any of that.
Anything that's done to help our veterans better cope with their issues, that helps them fight that war that never seems to end until they end the war themselves. Any place with anyone, as long as it's happening, is a good thing. That's my view on that, sir.
And I look forward to continuing the dialogue with the VFW. Thank you again to the chairman for hosting this joint hearing, and I yield back.
Thank you very much. The next to be introduced will be Congressman Walsh, followed by Congressman Holtzcamp, Brownlee, and Senator Rono.
Thank you, Chairman, and Commander, thank you for being here. To the Minnesotans who are here, I met with you yesterday. Just so you know, it's going to be warmer at home there than it is here, so tell every local you see here that to make them happy. They will get it. To the folks who came here today from across the country and for giving of your time in the VFW, I have to tell you and let you know that this front table here, you are as well represented in Washington as any organization in this country by these folks. Their professionalism and their dedication represents you all well, so I know that's an important piece of it. A special thank you. You heard Senator Manchin talk about the Clay Hunt Suicide Act. I think it's very important to know that Ray Kelly, Bob Wallace, your team here played a key role in working with Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America to make that bill possible. And yesterday I got a note from Clay's father who said, like so many things, he was grateful that we're making sure no other family goes through this. But he said something I think all of you should be very proud of. He said, while so many Americans are frustrated with our system, he said, I believe so deeply when I watch the veteran service organizations and members of Congress and Secretary McDonald and Democrats and Republicans stand on that stage and say, we will not let this stand. We will not let one more suicide take place. And he said that in Clay's memory is something that makes me proud. So thank you all for making that happen. You were a key part of that. And again, my message to all of you, and you're hearing some great ideas, and to my colleagues who set up there, this is a committee that is dedicated to getting it right. It has a well-earned reputation through the decades of working together to serve our veterans. But I mentioned this the other day, and I say to this, wondering for all of you, what difference does it make if you come here? What difference does it make if you sit in a chair in a room and you listen to people up here? What is the impact? I would tell you it makes all the difference in the world, because my point on this is that the care of our nation's veterans is the one thing that unifies all of our constituencies. You will find no one in California, Hawaii, Minnesota, Georgia, wherever it may be, that doesn't say, make this a priority. What tends to change is the people who set up here. The constant is you as the conscience of those people and the veterans. So I'm thinking of this when I hear these things, because I'm watching this front table. They literally have nearly heard it all over the decades, I think. And I was thinking about this issue of this Jobs to Skills Act, and Senator Manchin was talking about this. If you remember, we passed a bill a few years ago, the Veteran Skills to Job Act, and we have more work to do. But to show you what your work did on this, I have a webpage up. I represent the Mayo Clinic in southern Minnesota. And if you go to the Mayo Clinic's website, it says a life-changing career. Your service made you a leader with strengths in commitment, quality, and teamwork. Leverage these traits in a civilian career with a new mission and purpose. Mayo Clinics values these qualities to achieve the mission, the needs of the patient first. And if you go in, they have a calculator in here that lets you put in your MOS, and then it shows your skill set and the jobs that are available in your area. That's what you asked for. That's what you're going to get to do. And you know what surprised me is I put in my 13 Bravo, and there's actually jobs for a cannon crewman. Because they took it and they said operation manager, crew supervisor. So if you're a first sergeant in an artillery unit, and I think a lot of our troops don't know that, you made that happen. So it's about staying with it. It's about staying consistent. And on toxic wounds, you fought the issue, and we came to the conclusion, and we saw clusters of Parkinson amongst Vietnam veterans that absolutely defied all odds. We presented that medical evidence, as your commander said, and lo and behold, then Secretary Shinseki said, you're right, let's grant those claims. And we didn't have to go through this 3-year or 3-decade fight with your own government. We said the evidence is there, fix it, it's right. The same thing needs to happen with Gulf War illness. The same thing needs to happen with the burn pits, and we need to stop it from happening.
Yes, sir.
And then we need to recognize when you do that, and you add tens of thousands of people to the system, it's going to put a strain on it. It's not an excuse that the Niemer claims caused a backlog, but it's certainly one of the reasons. It doesn't go beyond it. And then we need to stay, the commander, you said it exactly right, we need to stay accountable. We need to continue to say that we will be the staunchest supporters of the VA, but we will be your harshest critics when you fail us. Continue to remain vigilant, continue to be that conscience, continue to ask for the best quality care, continue to ask for the delivery of benefits with the benefit of the doubt going to the veterans. And you know what comes out of that? Progress. And it comes out what the American people want. Care for those who are willing to serve us. Care for those who are willing to put their lives on the line to defend our freedoms. Come back and make the system work as well as it can. When we make mistakes, admit it, fix it, get rid of the people who made the mistakes, get the folks in who want to do better. And I would say this, all of that will only happen if these chairs are full of VFW members every single time you need to be here. So thank you for your service, and I yield back.
Representative Hulskamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Commander, for being here, and the other gentlemen in the room. And I want to thank you as well for your efforts of helping out with the rollout of the Veterans Choice Program, the website, the 1-800 number, and the survey has been very helpful. I've heard from plenty of constituent veterans that we need to do a better job of that. My district is uniquely positioned in this country. It's in 4 different VISNs, which creates all kinds of difficulties. And in many cases, my veterans are hundreds of miles from the nearest VA facility, but they have local options. And I also appreciate, Commander, you laying out that the VA has more authority than they've used as far as providing additional choice and options for veterans in rural area. I wonder if you could describe some of those items of how the VA could expand choice and provide more options for our veterans in rural areas. Commander?
Do you have data on that, Bob?
I think we're seeing that going slowly. They had to create the networks and so forth. We've got to do more. The VA's got to do more. It's unconscionable. And the 30-day rule, has to be a medical decision. We can't just say, even if a veteran says, I want to stay in the system, and the doc says, you got to be seen within 30 days, they got to be seen. And VA's got to figure out a way to see them. You know, they got to explain to the veteran, you know, we can't see you in the VA, but we can get you somewhere. You got to be seen because of a medical need that's got to be seen and addressed. It's a slow process. I mean, you know, you gave them 3 months to put it together, and I think Tri-Western HealthNet did a pretty good job. We need to educate the VA more on what they can do and shouldn't do, and it's got to be a can-do attitude, not a can't-do attitude. When a veteran comes to them and they see a problem, they got to take care of it right away. And we're working with them, and we're working with the committees, and we'll do whatever we can. We're getting word out and pushing VA and pushing you folks also if we see something that needs to be done legislatively.
Well, you identified in your presentation that more training is necessary for VA employees, so they recognize, according to your survey, only 1 in 5 veterans were told about their choice. I suspect there might be a few people in the VA that are not happy with the choice provisions, and but that's an option. And the Secretary, in testimony to the committee, did commit to making this a permanent option and making certain that, particularly for veterans in rural areas, that they understand and have access to that choice. I will note, working with the contractors there, hoping the VA can step it up, they have some options that would improve the system. But yeah, it's difficult to roll it out. Issuing choice cards to those who don't qualify for that, I'm not for certain that was the best decision by the VA. But it's going to take a while to work through that. But I have cases where people literally veterans travel hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles and one way to get care. In the meantime, they'll drive by 10 local community hospitals that are more than willing to tap into that network and be a resource for our veterans. And we need to allow them to step up and perform those services. But driving 300 miles for a cardiology appointment one way when you have a cardiologist in your local town is not only silly, it's stupid, and we have to change that. So appreciate your efforts, Commander, and the rest of the VFW. Say, hey, here is the choice you have. And most veterans will probably choose to stay in the system. But again, I hadn't even thought about the situation, Mr. Wallace. If you got to wait more than 30 days and the doctor says you can't, we have to have the flexibility in the system. Say, hey, here's where you can go. So we'll continue to work together. Thank you for your efforts on that part. So, Mr. Commander, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to join all my colleagues here today expressing my gratitude to you, Commander, to your team, and to all of the veterans who are here with us today of foreign wars. We really appreciate your service to our country and your continued service as veterans to all of our returning men and women to make sure that they get the services that they have earned and deserved. And I also want to associate myself with all of the comments and concerns in the areas that we need to continue to work on, whether it's homelessness or suicide, unemployment, women's health issues. And I also want to say, all of you returned, thank God, but many of your colleagues did not return, and so we also need to make sure that we work very, very hard that each and every one of those who did not return, that their families are taken care of, their children are taken care of, their spouses are taken care of appropriately so that they have the quality of life that they also have earned and deserved. Thank you. I wanted to drill down a little bit more on women's health care. So, Commander, as you said, I'm also not a medical professional. I think I know how to put a Band-Aid on too, but that's kind of where my expertise ends. But I do, this is a hypothesis of mine based on some testimony that we've had around toxic exposure, that I think we're getting a grip or a handle on toxic exposure and other diseases, whether it's, cancer and other kinds of things. I also think, this is my hypothesis, that toxic exposure is also impacting the mental health side of the equation, and that our veterans are suffering, and it might be identified as PTSD or a suicide candidate, but I think that some of the cause may actually be their exposure to toxins in their service to their country. So I think that this is an area where we need to do more research and drill down further to understand that, but just wanted to hear if you agree with me on that hypothesis and what your comments might be.
We totally agree with you on that, ma'am. And as a matter of fact, it frightens me when I think that the possibility that we may have just scratched the surface on this. So yes, we need more research. We need to look into this. We need to keep eyes wide open on it. And yes, all this takes money. We've got to do funding for these things.
Chairman Benishek and I yesterday had a round table and had a lot of people there to speak to this issue around toxic exposure. There was a doctor there who came and offered her conclusions, doctor from Cornell University, and she talked about some specifics in terms of mental health impacts from toxic exposure and the fact that women, based on her research, that women are symptomatic earlier than men are in some areas. So anyway, I think it's an area that I agree and would love to work with you to drill down further on some of these issues. So again, I thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for your service to our country. We've got a lot more work to do, and I look forward to working with you to get that accomplished.
Thank you. We do as well.
Next will be Senator Hirono, followed by Senator Rounds and Representative Costello. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Chair Isaacson and Chair Miller, for convening this meeting, and to Commander Stroud and all of the rest of the panelists. Thank you very much for being here, and of course, to all of the veterans who are in the audience. I would like to take the opportunity to give a shout out to the folks from Hawaii, the veterans from Hawaii who are here, and I hope that the chairs will allow them, if they're still here, to wave, because you have come a long way. It's Fred Chang, George Bartlett, Norbert Enos, back there, Frank Bragg, and Carlos Santana from my state office. Really proud to see you here, Carlos. Thank you very much. I chaired a Veterans Committee field hearing in Hawaii last year and heard many of the concerns that you've expressed this morning. I have a question about veterans' homelessness. When I met with Secretary McDonald just a few weeks ago, and also in his testimony before the Senate Veterans Committee, he said that his goal is to eliminate veteran homelessness by the end of this year. So, Commander Stroud, do you think that the VA is on track to meet this goal of ending veterans' homelessness by 2015? by this year. And could you provide your thoughts on VA's efforts to do this and whether you think that they have the tools necessary and the resources necessary to end veterans' homelessness?
I applaud the efforts of the VA to end veterans' homelessness, and they're making headway. I don't have an opinion on whether or not they're going to get it ended totally by the end of this year. It's important that we do end veteran homelessness, because I find it appalling that someone defended this great nation,
yes,
and can't have a roof over their head. I'm not advocating for all these handouts, but I would be a big advocate of a hand up.
Completely agree. The VA has said that they will be undergoing an assessment process to determine whether facilities should be closed or should be consolidated. Secretary McDonald says that this realignment of VA's medical facilities is being undertaken to best serve veterans and to shed those facilities that are not economically viable and no longer provides value to the veterans. Assuming that this process is necessary, Commander, how would you want the VA to proceed with this assessment? And what kind of involvement is there for VFW in this assessment process?
Well, we would be actively involved with it. If they were going to propose closing a facility, we didn't think so, they would hear from us. And so would you.
I know I can count on
Now,
that.
we will acknowledge that the demographics of our nation is changing every year. There are more people headed west than ever before. Some towns are getting smaller. So, yeah, we've got to adjust, to whatever the demographics are. But I would certainly be wary of eliminating any facility that some veterans were counting on using for their care.
I think it would be very important for VA to hear your perspectives, because you folks are really very much on the ground in terms of the veterans' needs in your own areas. This is a short question regarding licensing and credentialing, because, of course, we want our active duty people, when they become veterans, to be able to get jobs in the civilian sector. And a lot of this has to do with transferring the experiences that they have while in active duty to the civilian side. So you mentioned in your testimony, Commander, that the DoD spends nearly $2 billion each year to finance veterans' unemployment benefits, and that we need to do more to expand DoD pilot credentialing programs to help our service members get the licensure and other credentials they need. So can you give your thoughts on how we're proceeding, how we're doing with these efforts?
We have a long way to go. We still have states that aren't recognizing military certifications for private licensing. And those states need to get on board and do the right thing. Like I said earlier, I would trust my health care to a battlefield medic every day of the week.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Rounds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know I talked to a couple of the crew from South Dakota that were in the office earlier today. Is my South Dakota crew here yet? Are they? There you are. All right. Hello. Thanks for being here. Look, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to take a lot of time asking a long question. I do think that at times we do more talking and less listening than we probably should. I'd like to use a few minutes you've been through a long committee hearing today, and I'm thinking from the time that you started until the time that you ended, you might have had some thoughts that you'd said, if I get an opportunity, I want to say something. I'm going to give you a few minutes here, and if you'd like to say something on it. But let me personally begin by just saying thank you to all of you out there. I'm one of the recipients of what you've done for my generation. if it wasn't for the men and the women that have so proudly worn the uniform of the United States of America, we wouldn't have anything here. The freedoms that we enjoy, the opportunities that we have, would not be here if it wasn't for your sacrifice and your service. So I thank you for what you've done. But right now, I'd just like to ask any one of you, do any of you have any thoughts that you would like to share with this committee that you maybe haven't had an opportunity to share up until this point?
Yes, sir.
Please.
I would like to share with you that I have the greatest job in the world. The reason I have the greatest job in the world is because I get to sit here and be an advocate for the greatest people in the world, and that's our nation's heroes and these folks sitting back here.
Thank you.
Also with us this trip, and we've decided we're going to do it again, we partnered up a couple of years ago, signed a memorandum of understanding with the Student Veterans of America. And this year, at this conference, we brought 10 members of Student Veterans of America here with us as fellows to this legislative conference. Would your SVA fellows please stand and be recognized?
Yeah.
And we have not only decided to continue doing this in subsequent years, but we're going to expand it. And the goal is going to be to bring a fellow from every single state.
There you go. Love it. Love it.
Well, that's about the horn that I wanted to toot.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I just once again thank you for everything that you've done, and we are very grateful because we wouldn't be able to be up here if it wasn't for you and everything that you've done for us. So thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
Thank you, Senator Rounds. Commander Stroud, we've been called for a vote on the Senate floor, so I'm going to turn the gavel over to Chairman Miller. But I'd like the permission of Chairman Miller, if I can, to make an acknowledgement. You know, leadership by example has always, to me, been the best form of leadership. It is obvious to me that you are a great leader. It's obvious to me the VA is lucky to have you, and it's obvious to me that you have our back as we move forward in making the 40-mile rule work, making the VA work, getting the services to our mental health so our veterans who suffer from PTSD and TBI get the services they need. But most importantly of all, you and your members are the eyes and ears of these two committees to report to us what's going right, to report to us what's going wrong, and to be our cheerleaders as we go about trying to make them fix. But I just want to thank you for your service to the country, for your service to the United States of America, and for your appearance here today. Chairman Miller.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Mr. Costello, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today and sharing with us your testimony, as well as those seated behind you. If I could just ask those from Pennsylvania here, if you could stand up and just be recognized real quickly. I have the great honor of serving on this committee and work with other members of the Pennsylvania delegation to make sure your concerns are addressed. And I just wanted you to know, whether you're in my district or not, we in Pennsylvania work very well together on veterans issues, and I'm very pleased to be serving on this committee. Chairman Miller has been a tremendous advocate and provided us all a great tutorial on how to be effective members on this committee. Commander, I ask you this question, and if you'd like to share it with or have another member seated there answer it, that's perfectly fine. You pointed out in your written testimony the need for health care services does not peak until years, sometimes decades later, after veterans leave military service. And you pointed out that the VHA of the future will need to be more flexible. And my question is directed towards the concept of flexibility. In order to provide the high-quality care and services that our veterans deserve, what should we be doing, what should the VHA be doing to ensure that when that peak need arises, the VA is equipped to serve them well? And specifically, in talking about flexibility, what do we need to do to improve care in the future for our veterans?
Well, they need to accurately project in what the need's going to be in the future. You know what a military strength is at any given time, and also know that 81% of those folks are not going to be career military folks. They're going to separate after their enlistment is up. So now you've got a benchmark to shoot from. You know that if you've got a significant drawdown in military coming, that you're going to have a higher veterans health care issue. So you need to project what your expectations are realistically and prepare for them so that you're ready when it happens instead of backpedaling and doing crisis management.
And it's fair to say that improvement needs to be made on that front.
Yes.
Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also let the record show that the House has just taken over the entire Senate. Mr. O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commander Stroud, let me begin by thanking you and all those who are here with you today for your service to this country in uniform, out of uniform, day in, day out. I think you make all of us up here much better at what we do, given your expertise, your experience, your advice, your direction, and yes, your pressure to get us to do the right thing. I feel like I have benefited enormously from that, and I see Mr. Kelly up here, Mr. Wallace, and others who've appeared before us in committee and subcommittee hearings, and they shed a lot of light on issues that I'm only beginning to understand. So I want to thank you for that, and then I would like to apologize for not being here earlier. I also have the privilege of serving on the House Armed Services Committee, as do some of my colleagues up here. And we had a chance to meet with General Campbell about our continuing operations in Afghanistan. And we recently had the 3rd Brigade, the Bulldog Brigade from the 1st Armored Division at Fort Bliss was just there. And I wanted to make sure I understood what the conditions are like there, what our strategy is, and what the goals and the objectives are, and what we're going to do to achieve them. And then understanding that, I want to make sure that I support our service members to the hilt. At the same time, serving on this committee, I want to make sure that my colleagues on HASC and my colleagues on Congress understand that the total cost of war is not assumed in the decision to go overseas to fight our enemy there, that much of that cost is incurred when our service members return and transition into civilian life. And while I think we're doing a near exemplary job in supporting our service members going over, I have been sorely disappointed in the job that this country has done when those service members come back. There are bright points of achievement and progress, and you all have done a wonderful job of highlighting those, but there are areas of poor performance that absolutely should not be accepted and are not accepted by us and by myself in particular. Access to mental health care, access to primary health care in a reasonable amount of time, understanding the performance metrics from the VA and being able to trust them. Those are all things that you've helped us to better understand. One of the hearings that we had recently as part of this committee was looking at the troubled history the VA has had in building major medical facilities around the country. And I'm sure there are some good examples we could point to, and we think that by and large, those veterans in El Paso, whom I have the honor of representing, when they can get in, get terrific care. And they make a point of telling me that. But far too many cannot get in. We looked at one of the more egregious failings of the VA in Aurora, Colorado, a project that originally was expected to cost about $600 million. Today, we think upwards of $1.1 billion, perhaps even $1.4 billion. And one of the alluded to, not yet proven conditions that might have caused that is the fact that originally that VA facility was to be affiliated with a teaching institution, and the decision was later made to separate that. I want to ask you or anyone that you'd like to refer the question to, how flexible should we be should you be as a major VSO, should our veterans be in how that care is delivered? We want to make sure that we're ultimately seeking world-class health care that's accessible to all veterans in a very timely fashion. How flexible are we willing to be in how that is delivered? In other words, standalone institutions, affiliated institutions, pursuing this idea of choice. Would like to hear your thoughts on that.
If it's anything less than the finest medical care in the world, our veterans deserve nothing less. It's just that simple, sir. And I have no objection to being in a training environment. However, there better be a darn good instructor.
If I could characterize Aurora with perhaps not having all the facts to support this, it was a case of allowing the perfect to become the enemy of the good. We had something really good, achievable within a reasonable budget. My understanding is that we held out for a standalone, veterans-only facility that ended up costing us a lot. And as someone who supports and serves veterans in El Paso, I look at that as hundreds of millions of dollars that could have been spent to support health access in communities like mine that are now being invested in a very expensive, not very efficient or effective use of capital dollars. So my time is up. I would love to continue to get your feedback on how we do the best with limited resources to deliver what I agree should be the minimum, which is world-class health care for each and every veteran. Thank you again for your service and for being here today. Appreciate it.
I want to thank all the members for attending today. I want to thank you, Commander, for your testimony and your very encouraging answers to the questions that this committee has in fact posed to you. I want to say that together with your 1.9 million members of your organization and the auxiliaries, we will keep pushing forward. Let's work together. Let's work with the VA. Let's get the benefits that have been earned and are deserved. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.